Buenos días.
Buenos días.
This is in Spanish, everybody knows.
Yes, of course. I'll start in Romanian, but after I switch to English. Bună ziua tuturor, mulțumim pentru că ați dat curs invitației noastre de a participa la acest workshop / conferință / întâlnire cu unul dintre reprezentanții partenerilor noștri. UNHCR means United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Este un partener recent al Universității de Vest din Timișoara, cu care am semnat un protocol de parteneriat, un partener care aduce o contribuție importantă în acest moment în ceea ce privește statusul imigranților pe teritoriul României și nu numai pe României, ci pe întreg teritoriul Europei. Let me present you the representative of UNHCR Romania, Mr. Pablo Zapata. It's a dual citizen of Chile and Spain. He earned his law degree at Catholic University of Santiago, Chile, and received his attorney accreditation from the Chilean Supreme Court. Before joining this organization, he worked in business consultancy in Chile and in the United States, and he speaks English, French, Albanian, and Spanish, of course, as I know. Pablo Andreas Zapata Olivares has served with the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees since 1998. He is the High Commissioner representative in Romania, where he arrived in March 2022, initially on an interim basis to support Romania's response to the Ukraine refugee situation. Pablo Zapata's work is crucial in addressing the humanitarian challenges faced by displaced population, particularly in Romania, during the ongoing refugee crisis arising from the conflict in Ukraine. His role as the UNHCR representative involves not only direct support to refugees, but also significant advocacy for their rights and integration into the local communities. Prior to this current role, Pablo was the UNHCR representative in Albania from 2017 up to 2022, leading the office in supporting the Albanian asylum system in the context of increasing mixed movements of refugees and migrants and in reducing the risk of statelessness in the country. He served as Syria Senior Cluster Coordinator between 2015 and the mid-2017, where he coordinated the interagency protection sector composed of UN agencies, international and national NGOs, working to address the protection needs of those affected by the conflict. Between 2010 and 2014, he led both the resettlement and the protection teams as UNHCR in Ecuador and challenges faced by the Colombian refugees. In 2009, he completed short assignments in Kenya with a focus on internal displacement, and then in Costa Rica, where he coordinated the regional resettlement of refugees. Between 2004 and 2008, he served in UNHCR Spain as protection officer, where inter alia UNHCR supported efforts for address the challenges posed by the mixed flows of refugees and migrants. Between 1999 and 2003, he worked in Albania on Kosovo refugee crisis and subsequently supporting the establishment of nascent asylum system. He started his humanitarian career with UNHCR in Rwanda in 1998. Monitoring the situation of repatriated persons and overseeing the protection services to refugees in Kiziba camp. Pablo Zapata highlights how the number of displaced people globally has risen dramatically over the years, from about 2 million when he started to work at this organization to more than 108 million by the end of 2022. He stressed the need for a quicker resolution to conflicts, noting the resolving just a few key of global crises could significantly reduce the number of refugees worldwide. He emphasizes the humanitarian challenges faced by the refugees and the critical importance of preserving their dignity. He highlights the need for ongoing solidarity and support from host countries and international communities. In various interviews, he discussed how the treatment of displaced population can significantly impact their mental health and well-being, stressing that recognizing their rights and needs is essential for the effective humanitarian response. Mr. Zapata noted that while many refugees express a desire to return home when it's safe, they also seek to integrate to their host societies, which requires careful planning and support. His insights reflect a broader understanding of the complexities surrounding displacement, calling for concerted efforts to ensure the refugees are treated with respect and their dignity are provided in their journeys. Mr. Pablo Zapata, welcome to West University of Timișoara. Have your the floor, as we say.
Thank you very much. This is always a little bit embarrassing to hear about oneself. So the two takeaways that I've been around for a long time, so I'm quite old. And the second one that I've been doing this for quite a number of years. So I'm old and stubborn. So that I would think summarizes all this. Also to mention that I'm here with my colleagues from the office. We have a team in Timișoara that has a number of functions. One of them is related to the Emergency Transit Center that Timișoara proudly and Romania proudly hosts, which is a unique center in its nature in the whole world. It's a transit facility for refugees that are going elsewhere in resettlement, and also they are our team in the western part of the country supporting the refugee response for Ukraine. I have two alternatives this morning. So I am a little bit informal. You will discover throughout the coming minutes. So I'm still with this, and we are. But anyway, we'll do other things. There's two ways of spending the coming minutes together. One, I can tell you the spiel, why and where and refugees and what happened in Ukraine and how we dealt with under the leadership of the government, etc., which is quite interesting. I assure you, it's a good spiel. The other is that you say a few key words of what you would like to hear today. And then I tweak the things and go along those directions. I personally prefer the second one. I hope you are a bunch of of people who are not afraid to interact and talk. So if you wouldn't mind, I would ask you to say in one sentence what you would like us to address today, and then we tweak it that way. I have to say that I am very, very, very far in my generation with regards to your age, but I have two kids in the university, so I am in a way close. One is studying political science in the final year, and the other is just studying in architecture. So that's my link to your generation. Some time ago, I discovered that I absolutely have no idea what your generation thinks about anything. And that was a revealing moment when I thought before I could understand every generation. I said, no, these guys, I have no idea. So what would you like to discuss today? If nothing comes, it's going to be a very short thing. Yep. Small but organized, okay? Okay. I think we will have a specific discussion after this on media disinformation with some of you, but we can address it, yes. Sorry, this is a very fancy pen. And yeah, but I'm afraid that I will destroy it because I'm left-handed. Fantastic. You see, that's where the university is when you need it. Yeah. Okay. This and misinformation. Okay. Which other issues? Around the issue of refugees, of course. Yeah. I insist it's going to be very short. Yep.
How is the situation of the social workers What is the situation of the social workers in Ukraine? Do they have an impact, or how do they manage the war and all that stuff?
Okay, thank you very much. You're not a you're a fake university student. Yeah. You can say it in Romanian, sorry, or in Spanish. Da? Hi.
Maybe about the preconceptions they have to face every day being refugees in a foreign country.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
How do international organizations find the most efficient ways to cooperate between them in times of crisis in order to properly help those people in need? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now there's no stopping you, right? Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm not sir, I'm Pablo.
Oh. I am a student at Sociology and Human Resources, and I'm interested in the general opinion of Europe's population about migration, because I've heard some takes that are not really politically correct, but I wanna discover what's the general opinion.
Okay. Thanks. Super. From the small but organized group.
Yes. Matter of fact, I wanted to ask about the ways in which your organization and others such as it help refugees integrate in their new countries or in their temporary countries.
Okay.
I think I'd like to learn more about the limit between maintaining a national culture in a foreign space and the idea of integration. So how exactly these two concepts can interact with each other without determining some sort of a segregation for refugees.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask how the refugees, Ukrainian refugees from the war, fit with the phenomenon of the Balkan trade of refugees from Turkey in Europe.
Only this? Okay, I hope we can order pizza at some point and then, yeah, breakfast. Yeah. Okay. Let's go from let's be Anglo-Saxon and not continental. So let's go from the specific to the general and not vice versa. Okay. So let's start local, and then we go into the EU and more global issues of refugee governance. Is that okay? I mean, you don't have many choices. If I say it's okay, it's okay. So I'm the guy with the mic now. So you can hear well, no? We all think that we will never be refugees. That's one of those things that we grow up with. It's like when we foresee our life ahead, since we become socially conscious, if you will. We have a family, we have a school, we have friends, we have our extended family, even the uncle and aunt that we don't like very much, but it's part of the extended family, so we're stuck with it. And we say, okay, I want to go to the university, Timișoara, of course, and I want to do this and this and this and that. And then when you go into your adult life, also we base our life on a sense of stability. So you eventually meet someone, partner with, or marry, or live together on the basis of, and eventually you have kids on the basis, and you get jobs on the basis of what you expect the conditions to be. So in a way, we are not prepared for trauma. we are prepared for stability. Our projection is in terms of stability. It's very difficult that one thinks from early ages, okay, I will prepare for in case there is a major earthquake and everything disappears, or in case that there is a war nearby me and I have to escape, or in case of this or in case of that. And that's normal. We live with those assumptions, and it's good and it's healthy, etc. to do that. What happened in Ukraine in February 2022 was that first was a violation of the let's go on the legal aspects. So it was a violation of the UN Chart. It was a full-fledged invasion. It was not the invasion of Ukraine that had happened already for many years before, and Crimea and parts of the Donbass were already under occupation. So it was what we call the full-fledged escalation. But then people were thinking about what to do the next weekend. And people were thinking, okay, shall I change my car for a new one? Or shall I change my job? Or are we going to visit the grandparents in spring? How we are going to spend the next Easter period? And all that comes to a standstill and changes overnight. The impact of that is brutal on everybody's life. What you plan for tomorrow is not happening because then at 5 o'clock, telephones started to ring, news started to come out, and there was a different reality. So being a refugee is first and foremost a person for whom the fundamental tenets of the life that you expected to have changed either gradually or drastically, either in a matter of minutes or fruit of repression of many years that eventually comes to you in protracted situations, in situations of constant violation of human rights. And your life is not going to be the same, not only the one of refugees, but the ones of the persons who are internally displaced. So persons who also have to flee their homes, but remain in their own country, or people who never move, but they are nevertheless affected by the circumstances. No, nobody's life is the same in Ukraine after February 2022. By extension, the societies receiving refugees, the life of the persons in these societies also changes. In the words of a mayor of a mid-sized town, I will not reveal the town, he told me once, I did not know that my city was full of heroes. I had no idea. But then after seeing what was mobilized, the level of solidarity, the level of selflessness, he was shocked. I think Romania was in shock. Romania was in shock of what could achieve in face of an unprecedented refugee movement, the biggest one and the most rapid one, not the biggest one, but the most rapid one since the Second World War, for which the country was prepared, but the society was unaware of it. What happened in Romania and in other countries, but I'm focusing on Romania, and I think Romania did, to the credit of Romania and to the disbelief of Romanians, extraordinarily well. So when you tell Romanians, listen, Romania did really up to the highest standards, you get the rolling eyes things, really, like, we don't trust really who we are, no? We don't trust that we can be excellent, efficient, rapid, humane, solidary. But Romania was, and Romania remains. I think that's important. Despite the noise that you hear in social media, Romania remains, and I will go into the issue of misinformation and disinformation linked to that. The response was at all levels, was the official level, was at the level of organizations, and what was at the level of society. In a way, what I've said in some events in the past, I've said Romanians at some point decided that they didn't want to watch the news, they wanted to be part of the news. And people spontaneously went to different places where they seeing how they could help, etc., and really gave and continue giving a lot. I would say in the more formal side, Romania has done remarkably well, was because of two key decisions that were taken at the beginning. The first 5 days in an emergency, really even less than that, but let me put it to 5 days, really dictate how things are going to go for the coming months, if not years. So early decision making is crucial. And early decision making in a context where you do not have all the information that you would like to take a decision. So you have some information, but you don't have a lot. And you have no idea what is coming in the future. Those days, let's remember, so you were at that time, I don't know, 15, 16 to maybe 20, or I don't know your ages. You're all horribly young. Let me state that from the beginning. Offensively young, in a way. So, but you would remember that those days, the Russian tanks were reaching Kiev. Literally reaching Kiev, the outskirts of Kiev. And there was a key battle that nobody, it is spoken of, but not really publicly spoken. The tip of the balance in regards to Kiev was that the Russian forces couldn't take the airport. And Ukrainian special forces managed to retain control of the airport. Otherwise, we would have seen not 8 million people, but 2 or 3 times that number. Romania did 2 impressive things from the beginning. First, when activating the emergency on the first day, they decided to continue working with the same teams that had worked for 2 years on COVID, interministerial teams, and to tweak those teams and to repurpose them for the refugee response. Why this is important? It may seem not so relevant, but as in every organization, different parts of a body have different sensibilities, sensitivities, different perspectives, different ways of doing business. So it takes a long time, even across ministries or institutions, or even in the UN family, to trust each other and to accommodate your style of work with the others. These people had been working for 2 years. They had created levels of trust. They had created friendships. They knew about each other, kids, you know. And now they were asking, okay, what you did for COVID for 2 years, repurpose it under the leadership of the Department of the Emergency Situations, repurpose it for the Ukraine crisis. First decision. Second decision, Romania was the first country to launch at the same time the emergency response along with a medium and longer term response, the same day. And the first one was, as I mentioned, assigned to the Department of Emergency Situations as coordinating authority. And the second one was given to the Chancellor, the Prime Minister. So immediately as things were coming, the government, authorities, civil society, and I'm not speaking about this from a perspective of party politics. I'm just saying the institutions of the government were already thinking, okay, what comes next? What comes next? How do we sustain this in the medium and in the longer term? And that was fundamental. Romania was the first country with an action plan for the protection and inclusion of refugees from Ukraine in the whole Europe. It hosted the first European level conference on it. And other countries were really looking at Romania and to what are you guys doing so that we can replicate. Many people do not know this, and it's important, not at the level of national pride, which also is important, but also is important in terms of collective memory. Because then we tend to forget, life tends to happen. Inflation comes or goes, elections happen or don't happen. Life happens to us. And we tend to forget of what we were collectively capable of. In this context, the issue, and this was one of the points raised, of how is cooperation in times of crisis. Cooperation in times of crisis is complicated. It's complicated for a number of reasons. Ukraine has been a humanitarian situation of geopolitical relevance. It is not more or less important than other wars in the world in human terms, but in geopolitical terms is of a different nature, because it involves one of the big powers of the world, and other big powers were in the opposite side supporting, in this case, Ukraine. So the implications are enormous. In this context, we enjoyed in UNHCR, but every organization working for refugees in every country enjoyed an unprecedented level of resources at their hand. So we had a situation where we also had to add to this, there were very few organizations working with refugees in Romania before 2022. Very few. One of them is present here, EDROM, which is our partner in the Emergency Transit Center, but also working now with refugees from Ukraine. There was the National Council, Romanian Council for Refugees, CNRR, as well, a few organizations, Jesuit Refugee Service. But then from one day to the other, a number of other NGOs working with vulnerable Romanian population devoted their programs also to refugees without having worked with refugees before, and refugees have a number of particularities to work with. And then all these NGOs got from their traditional donors and sources a lot of money. We also did. In the case of UNHCR, we have in the interagency context involving UN agencies and major global NGOs, a coordinating role on this side. We don't coordinate the overall response. The overall response is under government's leadership, but we coordinate the actors. But when you try to coordinate a number of actors where everybody's trying to grow at the same time and everybody has a lot of money, the incentives for coordination are very low because everybody's just busy trying to set up a new set of programs. We were equally busy. This was a UNHCR office, like many others in this part of the world, very small. 8 persons in Bucharest and 3 in Timișoara. That was the team. And we grew into 95 persons in a matter of months. And our budget grew from $1.something million to we had at our disposal over $100 million. We didn't spend all of it because you cannot spend irrationally. So you have to spend whatever you think is going to be a contribution. So we spaced the contributions of the first year in the first 2 years. And in this context, as I was saying, the incentives for cooperation and coordination are low. When the funding starts to run out, when programs start to face complexities and problems, there is more incentive for coordination. Even in this context, a number, particularly Romanian organizations, were very keen to coordinate, also because they didn't know about the refugee context, so they were also willing to learn at the same time. Another very interesting aspect of the official part of the response was that, and this was a very new experience for me personally, and I've worked, as it was mentioned before, in a number of emergencies before. This is, I think, my 3rd big emergency. The Romanian authorities were extremely candid and open to learn and to listen. And this is not the type of authorities that you normally meet in your humanitarian work. You meet 2 types normally of authorities, those completely uninterested, and there are entire refugee operations where the government tells to UNHCR, this is your baby, tell us from time to time how it goes, but this is yours. And others which are so restrictive and so afraid of anything that goes beyond their control that it's difficult to operate in those contexts. In the case of Romania, it was very inquisitive, it was very ductile, it was very candid in the exchanges we were having. Let me give you an example, 2 examples. The response at the borders was coordinated by the Pompieri within the Department of Emergency Situations, with senior officials of the DSU in some of the major border points. So at the end of the day, in Siret border point, which was the main point of entry, then Colonel, now General Marius Dogeanu, would call all the organizations present, and there were many. I don't know if you saw, if you were there, or if you were not there, if you saw, there was a road where it was like a marketplace. I mean, it was organization after organization offering this, offering that, with all kind of call us here, call there if you need it. So it was a lot of things. And every night there would be an assessment meeting of what we have learned today, how things work, what we can improve. This was taken to a ridiculously fantastic point in Isaccea, which you know is fluvial, is river border, where people access by ferry. The meetings that Marius Dogeanu was having every evening in Siret were done after every ferry by Colonel Petrov in Isaccea. So after every ferry, one representative from every organization would get together with the DSU and with the authorities and say what worked in the previous ferry, what do we need to improve for the next ferry. That is crazy. In the humanitarian world, that is crazy. So you had this sponge, this learning machine that was growing. It was like almost like, how do you say, drojdie? I mean, I do bread. So yeah, the yeast. So you leave the bread for 40 minutes and then it's a monster like this. And you're like, okay, how do I do this? You know? So this was a little bit the feeling. So in a way, coordination also happened by mimicking what the authorities were doing. And the authorities themselves were very active in this coordination. And then we became increasing, as our capacity increased, increasingly active in coordinating international and non-governmental actors. At some point we developed and we continue to work under something that is called the Refugee Response Plan. We are 37 organizations. Next year we will be 42 organizations working still on refugee issues under a common plan with common objectives, etc. And the government had also its own plan of action. The former Prime Minister Chuka, when referring in the first year of anniversary of the Russian full-fledged invasion, he said we have one response and two plans. So that's how we complement, but it's one response. And that also for UNHCR was a learning process. We normally do not operate in industrialized countries. We operate in developed countries, in countries where sometimes the rule of law is fractured or non-existent, where actors do not take responsibility, official actors, I mean, state authorities do not take responsibility for their portfolios, etc. Here was very different, and not only here now in Romania, but in the EU context was very, very different. You had rule of law. You can be very critical of your own country. You are supposed to be critical of your own country at your age, or at any age. We're supposed to have criticism of our own country. But at the same time, you would acknowledge that Romania is not somewhere else where there is no rule of law and no institutions. So for us to operate on this, even our language in the humanitarian organizations was not really ready for having a very effective leadership role on the part of the government. So we had to polish, after a number of misunderstandings, we had to polish quickly how we speak about things, because we could mean the same thing, but it comes across different. So we continue coordinating through this refugee response plan. We are preparing the refugee response plan. First time it will be for 2 years. It has been yearly until now. Now it will be 2025, 2026. And there is still interest of civil society organizations, UN agencies, and we coordinate with the working group that is set at the level of the Chancellery of the Prime Minister, at the level of Secretaries of State, of the sectorial ministries, health, education, labor and social solidarity, and so on and so forth. The role of the social workers and other professionals in the context of crisis, and I will not only refer to what social workers are going through inside Ukraine, which as many other professions is dreadful, but there is a common element to a number of professions in the context of humanitarian crisis, which is that of service. We're all servants, and my colleagues are sick and tired of hearing me saying this, or maybe not so sick and tired in front of me. We are here to serve people. I may be wearing a tie and a suit. This is what fits my situation and and there in the photo. This is a bit embarrassing to see the photo and to listen to you. It's like, I mean, it's like, who's this person, you know? But at core, we are servants. We are jeans people and boots, and we have work in different areas, or in capitals also doing advocacy. That's as valid and as important as rolling up our sleeves and loading trucks when it comes to that, under fire in some circumstances. So the role of social workers, the role of health professionals, the work of lawyers, the work of interpreters in many cases, the work of a number of professions is extremely challenging, because also those professions, what you study, what you go through in regular time is very different than what you go through in a humanitarian crisis. And you need to adapt what you learned and what you have practiced to extraordinary circumstances. So what do you do as a social worker when the social protection network is destroyed? What you have learned in a way is to assess a case, vulnerabilities, social elements on a given case, and then you know that you can refer to this ministry or to that authority, local authority, etc., etc. What happens when they are totally collapsed or unable to operate? So what tools do you really have in your hands other than human solidarity and living and going really hand by hand with the persons that you are there to serve? But what is the service that you are giving until things are back into motion? It's extremely challenging and it's extremely frustrating. And there is a common element, not only to social workers, but to other professions that provide this type of direct service, which is the likelihood of you being burned out are extremely, extremely high. Extremely high. You feel, rightly so in many cases, that the weight of the world is on your shoulders, at least the weight of the life of some families that are entrusted to your care. And you are desperate because you cannot really provide all what you think should be provided or help in the way that you were taught at the university and in your professional life development that you could do. So the levels of frustration are high. The level of danger when you operate in insecure areas are very high. And for instance, in the UN system, we have very strict protocols about security, which can be bent under the authority of a designated official. We call it on life-saving missions, and we've had that. I had a few of those in Syria, entering in besieged areas to deliver assistance, etc. So there's a number of rules. We are very well protected. When you get to the NGO world and when you get to the social worker of a given municipality when the bombs are falling, it is very, 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 very risky. And that adds to your own stress because you may have also family responsibilities, people that you love, appreciation for your own life, not only the life of the people that you're serving. So there is we tend to value a lot objectivity. I tend to devalue objectivity because we are who we are thanks to our capabilities, but thanks to our emotions. And the emotions cannot be an afterthought. The emotions need to be part of who we are and how we act professionally. They cannot take over, as reason cannot take over. But you have to put your emotions on the line, and when you are in extraordinary circumstances, it's good that you and those around you, because one tends to shell oneself inside the shell, are able to observe our emotions. And this happens not only in extraordinary circumstances, but for instance, our colleagues working in the ETC now, in the Emergency Transit Center, have people from how many nationalities you have now, Camilla?
Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan.
So that's any given day in the life of our colleagues in the ETC and the NGO colleagues that work with us. And these people have gone through hell. They're here temporarily for maximum 6 months in Timișoara on their way to a different country. But so it doesn't only happen in super extraordinary circumstances. This can be your daily job. So how do we take care of each other? How do we support each other? What type of conversations we need to have inside the teams so that you're able to operate and to continue serving without being burned out? When you're burned out, it's a number of things. First, it's miserable for you, it's miserable for your country, but it's utterly unuseful. So if I see it from a managerial point of view, not only from a human point of view, which is my first perspective, but if I say, okay, it is people that are not able to operate correctly. So it is also in our mean interest, not only in our more altruistic human interest, that we are all operational and we take care of each other. And this is a thing important and depends on the career you're working. Sometimes we see our professional life, sorry, I'm speaking like grandfather Pablo, I'm not yet a grandfather, but I would speak like that as a grandfather, but in very individualistic terms, what I will do with my career, what is my career going, what is going to be my job. Partially irrelevant. What I would suggest is more relevant is with which teams I am going to work. In what type of context? Am I going to jump into toxic organizations and working cultures, or am I going to be able to express and free myself? What I tell to my colleagues many times, I am worried the day that there's not much laughter in the office and goofiness. You know, if that is happening, I'm like, ooh, what is happening? You know, as a manager. But think also in terms of your career and your service, in terms of the people you want to serve with, and the people and the experiences you want to live together. In an emergency like we had, and I don't know if Camelia was in that meeting because she was here, so I don't know how much online was. The first meeting I had with the original team of Romania, plus already the people starting to arrive in the emergency, was this experience that we live professionally together is going to mark our lives in many ways, in ways that we cannot fathom now. And we will remember this period, we can remember this period in two ways, basically. Oh man, this was terrible. It was awful. I mean, we had to work all these hours and we didn't know what was what and when was when and where was what and it was all terrible and oof, we got out of it and thank God we got out of it. Or we can say, man, this rocked. It was incredibly hard. It was super difficult. We had to put everything we are on the stake. But you know, we did it and we were able to serve, and cheers to that. And I said, my objective as your new boss, let's say, or a new representative, is that you live a second type of experience. So sometimes my people tend to ask me, so what do you do, what do you work? And I said, I do very little, honestly. I honestly do very little. Because my job is fundamentally enabling and giving the team the capacity to express itself in the best possible way. That's my job. And then take decisions and decide on budgets and a number of other things. But in the teams that you want to work, serving, look at the type of organization that there is, that is. Talk to people who have worked there. And decide. Well, sometimes one is not very free to decide because one has the bad habit of eating a few times per day and dressing clothes and being warm in winter. So you may need to work, but be very aware of where you're working and if it's time to leave and to look for something else. I could talk about what we're doing and the type of assistance. You can find most of it in our, not a web page, but in our portal. We have a portal with figures. Right now, just let me cover a bit the basics. The number of temporary protection issued in Romania to unique users is about, I think my phone was vibrating with that figure. Otherwise, I will kill a colleague. No. No, I don't have it. So it was at the end of, in mid-August was 162,000. By now, I think it's 171,000. Many more million pass through and settle in other countries. There are still the number of new residence permits to refugees from Ukraine on a monthly basis is between 4,000 and 4,500 per month. So if you think that the war is over, think again. New people coming, willing to settle in Romania. Now the country is not overflown. Let's say out of all these people that got the protection in Romania, there may be some 90 to 95,000 in the country. Others have moved back or move forward. This is what I call a football-size stadium kind of problem. If you are from Real Madrid, if you are from a smaller team, it's maybe 2 or 3 football stadiums. I am from Real Madrid. By the way, no, if there's somebody from Barcelona, you can, of course, leave the room and decide to work on something else. But although Barcelona had the UNHCR as a sponsor in their t-shirts for a number of years. For a country of 20 million in the European Union, with the level of growth and development of Romania, honestly, this is a medium challenge. It's not a great challenge. And that leaves us a bit, let's enter into the discussions about the European Union and so on. When you may remember, I don't know how to talk to young people anymore. I hope you remember that in 2015, there was a refugee crisis in Europe with about 1 million Syrians and others coming to Europe. At that time, I was working in Damascus in Syria. It was still time of the armed conflict. It's still time now of the armed conflict. But it was very active. And as coordinator of the protection response inside Syria, my caseload, the caseload of the organizations, was 9.7 million people. And here you had some of the richest countries in the world crying and complaining about 1 million people for the whole of Europe. Then the time came, and in a matter of weeks, there were 4 million Ukrainians out. Europe absorbed them without a peak. It was possible. The economic muscle is there. The capacity to welcome is there. The will of the population was there. So what is different between, and there was one question about the Balkan route versus the Ukraine. And that leads us to the whole issue of how do we see different types of refugee movements. There is a difference. Obviously, there is a difference. One are more like us, the others are less like us. Let's put it in those terms. And that has an impact, that has a societal impact. It's just human that we see people more keen or less keen. But it's not fair. It could be understandable, but it may not be legally correct, may not be ethically the way I perceive ethics, and is certainly not according to international law. So the complexities around that are very important for the societies. There was another question about, in my interpretation of the question, is how do we perceive naturally our societies versus what the societies are going to become with the presence of foreign persons. In a way, the refugee system, which is the refugees, the current refugee global system, is the offspring of the Second World War. There were, before the Second World War, international agreements regarding to refugees stemming from the League of Nations, which, as you know, or I hope you know, is the predecessor of the United Nations. And then, after the Second World War, states, so I'm going too long? Are you going to hit me?
He's my boss, I'm not gonna hit me.
Not in public. Yeah. It's more like this. Okay, thanks. Now I can sing. Strangers in no. So this world order, which is the world order of a Security Council with permanent members, which saw a flourishing of human rights treaties and conventions like never before, and that saw an expansionist conception of rights for all, universal, the United Nations, a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in a way has produced, as an inadvertent consequence, fear in some. Let's go again to how we were raised and the society we expected to live in. Let me put it in one of my countries. Let me go to Spain. Well, let's go to Chile. Chile is now very, very torn. Well, Chile is a particular country for many things. I will not bore you with that. But in terms of a country, it's more an island than anything else, because our borders are the Pacific Ocean. Our closest neighbor is New Zealand. In the south, we have the Antarctica. Our closest neighbors are the penguins. In the east, we have the second highest chain of mountains, kind of complicated to pass. And in the north, we have the driest desert in the world, the Atacama Desert. So we are an island. Nobody goes to Chile on transit somewhere. I mean, it's not like, oh, I lost my way and how can I go to, no, we're in Chile, man, that's end station, finish, finito. So the Chilean society is very conservative. We dance horribly. I mean, people think that Latin Americans dance fantastically, Chileans not. We dress in blue, boring. We are very square. We sell laws in the kiosks in the streets. Can you imagine? I mean, this is a very weird thing. And people who were born in Chile tend to think that Chile is going to continue being the Chile that they grew up in. And that's perfectly legitimate. And now we have close to 1 million Venezuelans, which are brothers and sisters, and they are very different in the way of being. They dress nicer, they know how to dance, they smile more, and they come to do some work in the society that Chileans do not want to take anymore. But at the same time, there's been a rise in criminality, which has been charged to refugees from Venezuela and partially from Colombia. And that has elements, but it's not the full picture, but it's the easy picture. So people are wondering, and in a country, in our national anthem, in the main part of our national anthem, we have que la tumba serás de los libres, so you will, saying to Chile, you will be either the grave of the free people, o el asilo contra la opresión, or the asylum against oppression. The word asylum is in our national anthem, and now we're saying no more refugees, no more people, because it's going to change Chile dramatically, you know? So the question is not refugees, yes or no, I think, in as much as what type of society we want to be. And you are studying, or you are from, a city which is incredibly cosmopolite. Cosmopolite?
Yes.
Cosmopolite, I don't know how to say it.
Romania,
Yeah.
cosmopolite.
And in a country, I don't know how many of you are Romanians, that one of the best descriptions I got that has helped me a lot in my work was from Her Majesty, from Princess Margareta, that I went to see, and I go from time to time to visit her in a way to tell her how things are going, because she was a great support. Also in the first part, we went together to some border points, and we were discussing about a public campaign that we launched last year. And she said, I consulted with her, as with other people, on her views of what we wanted to do and the myths and the misinformation we wanted to address. And she said, listen, the only thing I can tell you is that if you want to think about Romania, my advice, she said, is to think about Romania as a mosaic. We are a mosaic of people that came to this land in different periods from different parts, and we are that mosaic. And she said, we're kind of proudly that mosaic. So in a way, Romania, and you will not believe it, is the easiest country for a UNHCR representative to work with regards to the regular part of our job. So Syrians, Afghans, etc. The level of societal rejection of them is very, very low in comparison with most, if not all, other EU member states. There was a study with several European countries, not only EU, conducted in February this year by the European Council on Foreign Relations about all things Ukraine. Who is going to war to win the war? Would you support peace plans? What if this? What is that? All things of Ukraine. One question was about refugees. I was saying, in your view, are refugees from Ukraine a threat or an opportunity? And depending on the country this went. The closer you go to Ukraine, the more the perception of threat. The farther you went west, the more of the perception of an opportunity. And we were very worried because the result for Romania was 35% of people said that refugees from Ukraine were a threat versus 13% who said they are an opportunity. And we say, boo, 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 what is happening? What we are looking wrong, you know? Because refugees themselves were saying, well, and continue to report, that they largely do not perceive any bad society attitude towards them. Maybe some kid or a number of kids have been bullying in school, but kids can bully each other. I mean, you're closer to those years. I mean, bully each other for a number of things, and whatever you're different, you're bullied. I'm not saying this is okay. I'm saying it is something that could be expected of foreign kids. But refugees largely report that they don't feel discriminated or they don't feel uneasy, etc., that they still feel welcome in Romania, and this 35%. So I discussed this with Remus Tefuriak. He's the director of INSCOP, which is one of the big polling agencies and think tanks on these matters in Romania, and he said, let me check this figure. So, free of charge, he ran, as part of another poll, he ran a poll comparing 3 groups of foreigners. He said, how do you feel that the following group of persons is a threat or an opportunity? And he divided threat and opportunity in 2 subcategories: big threat or kind of threat, threaty, kind of cute threat, you know, or big opportunity or mild opportunity, or I don't know. Most of the people in the other poll said, I don't know, I don't care. And the first group was the persons from the Middle East. And there, if memory serves me well, people who saw them as a big threat was 25%, if I recall well. We said, okay. If you do this in another EU member state, and I will not say names, that figure goes over 60 or whatever. So it's really good figure. Then they asked about Ukrainians. And the number went slightly down, but not terribly down. 24, 23 or 24. So almost the same, which also, if one goes to Her Majesty mosaic approach, it explains a lot. We say we pretty much see the same Syrians or Afghans as Ukrainians, and Ukrainians are Orthodox, and there's not many Orthodox in Syria. Well, there are some, by the way. Yeah, but they are less different. Okay, we say okay. It was 25%. No, 24%, and then 11% consider refugees as a mild threat. That explains the 35. So if you just use one word, threat, you get super scared. But then the most interesting question was the third one. They say, how do you feel about migrants from other EU member states? These dangerous Germans and French. And there, the perception of them being a big threat was 10%. So that's your baseline. That's people who will see whoever under whichever circumstance and say this person is a threat. So if you build on that baseline, it is not that high. And that speaks very well of you, Romania, as a country, and you, Romanians, as a people. You know, if you run this in most of the other European Union countries, the results are totally the same. Now, do we need to look more into, there was a lot of emphasis for many years, and the word was integration, to integrate into something else. So we're asking the refugee to stop being who they are and integrate into something else. Now we talk about inclusion in the case, and this was developed in the context of Ukrainians, where you become part of something that you also co-create in a way. But yes, we have to admit that there is a number of people that see a threat in that. And we need to, my personal view, and I've mentioned it also in internal discussions in UNHCR, is we just cannot go around and say these people are such that ... And we fill the ... with whatever we believe about this attitude. Personally, I do not agree with that attitude. But we need to engage in a dialogue. We need to understand why the presence of these persons that are granted protection and international law is perceived as a risk, and how much of it, and I'm connecting with another question, is part of reality, and how part of it is the product of misinformation and disinformation. And I think last week I attended a very interesting forum with different journalists organized by G4 Media. And there was a journalist researcher from Poland, another one from Hungary, another one from Czech Republic, from Bulgaria, and from Romania. And misinformation and disinformation is something we have fought a lot and hard in UNHCR in Romania. We did last year a campaign that may have reached you if you have Spotify. You might have. It was very interesting because the best reception to the campaign was through Spotify, which is a certain age group and people at least who like music, which is kind of cool. And social media, etc. It was a mild campaign. It was about refugees, integration, inclusion in the Romanian society. Sorry, by the way, I can literally speak hours, so somebody has to do this to me at some point. And I'm a trained lawyer, so there to make judges asleep. So, born and bred. So, and we did that in response to a certain number of narratives that were taking shape in social media. And that narrative, those narratives, we hire a PR company that were able to analyze content of groups in social media, etc. And they say, listen, there is 3, maybe 4 narratives that you have to look into. The first narrative is why them and not us, which, by the way, research now with the situation of the floods in Galatz. So you had immediately some political parties saying, well, refugees were staying in hotels and our fellow Romanians are staying under the water. It's not true one, it was not true the other. But the simplicity of the message is appealing. The other was, but they don't need our help anyway, because they are in malls and you can see that they have mobiles and these kind of luxury items. Okay. The third one was what I call the historical grievances. So we are asked to welcome the Ukrainians, but what happens with the Romanians in Ukraine? They cannot speak their language, they are this and they are that, etc., etc. And around those 3 narratives, and there was kind of a splinter of one, but it's to go into too much detail. Maybe afterwards in the separate discussion we'll have about misinformation and disinformation, we can go. But so how do you counter it? And in this seminar last week, the researcher from Poland was giving a figure that is scary. In Germany, in the first 6 months of this year, there were 50 million social media accounts created by troll factories linked to the Russian Federation. 50 million. That's a lot. And I forgot the figure of posts that these 50 million accounts had produced, but it was huge. So how do you combat with a tiny, flimsy, cute campaign of UNHCR showing refugees learning Romanian, working, a kid going to school, etc.? We are no match for that. We're grossly unprepared to do that. Some of you are too young. Yes. Oh. There is, if somebody is studying linguistics, etc., you would have come to the name Umberto Eco, which is a semiologist of great caliber, who has the dubious achievement of writing a bestseller questioning the Catholic doctrine, which was awarded many awards by the Catholic Church. So it's that kind of intelligence, you know. It's called The Name of the Rose, and if you put also the Foucault's Pendulum and others, he's really also a very good novelist. But he said something about the internet that has stuck with me, also probably because of my age. He said, internet gave global voice to the silly of the village. In all our traditions, now I go more to Spain than Chile, we used to have in the small villages the person that was labeled, bullied, terribly affected. So I'm not being proud of that, but was said to be the silly of the village. Now, which was the guy that in the Spanish bar would sit in the bottom and talk things and nobody would really pay attention to. Now, this person has a keyboard or a mobile and can post globally things. So how do you address this when all opinions and all is the ultimate democratization of opinions, but it's the ultimate misappropriation of volume of opinions, a type of opinion. At the end of the day, what we are dealing in refugee issues, sorry, I'm becoming too philosophical, but you ask the questions, it was not me, your fault. We are dealing with a distorted or a different concept of truth. And that, those of you who have read George Orwell will become familiar. What is true is what I tell you is the truth. It's not what you think, it's not what you observe, it's what I tell you to be the truth. And I'm telling you this with 50 new million social media accounts so that you think it's democratic and it's widespread. So if we just were going to the, for instance, in our campaign, we did a monitoring of the response. We did a part of in our website that was, or a link in the campaign that you could go to Myths and Realities of Refugees. I think it's still online, so if you want to see it, it's quite interesting. The myth is this and the reality is that. And we would offer figures and so on. And the reaction to that, or to the post in the campaign, we had one colleague that painfully went all over them, and there were many. Now, 80%, and that surprised us, were positive, and 20% were negative. However, there's always a however. The positive ones were kudos, hearts, rainbows, you know, cutie things, short messages. The negative ones were posts. And then you could see that some of the posts were remarkably similar to each other. We didn't detect troll factories or etc. But this is what, I don't know how many communicators are among you, but what I understand communicators call the cave effect, or the closed box effect, something like this. It's people talking to each other in small groups, and when they come out publicly, they come out with a very similar message that they have honed and refined among themselves, not rationally, but you talk to people and your opinions tend to be more. So when you come out with the same type of arguments. So these 20 were difficult to read. Our colleague had sometimes to, you know, it's like, go for a walk. Okay, yeah, I go for a walk, you know, because they were very offensive and they were strong against people we are here to serve. So that is, I think, a very unfinished. I don't think the democratic states have taken, but this is a personal opinion. I'm not talking as UNHCR representative. Let me take the tie out for a moment and say that we lost one to the misinformation. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. You probably have other things. Yeah, it's time to close. Sorry. So I will bring it to an end. We are not taking sufficiently serious this threat. We are not dedicating sufficient resources, and we are not doing it at a massive level as the forces that want to question what truth are doing. So I think I need to close now. That is also linked to the preconceptions that the refugees face, which was another question. So you build on the fears of people. Building on fear is guaranteed money.
Yes.
Ding ding.
You know, if you build on solidarity, on good values, it takes a longer time. If you build on fears, it's immediate, because we are animals that have survived as a species thanks to fear. Fear has been our main ally in evolution. I'm saying this, I'm not a biologist, I'm just a guy with a big mouth now. But our sense of fear, and we distrusted for thousands of years the guys from the other clan and the other tribe, because they were our competitors for resources. So we are programmed to distrust the other. We are programmed to be afraid of the other. So building fears on this that has taken evolution, millennia, to refine and to hone and to perfect, is, again, ching-ching, guaranteed money. It's easy bitsy. So I think we are a bit into that element. I think I have touched on all the issues that you have proposed to discuss. So I think this was useful in some way, or in many ways. I mean, you have to say this was a transformative experience in my life. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that we have some time still for debate,
questions,
thoughts.
Yes, for questions. Thank you, Pablo, for these sincere thoughts and for this exceptional presentation of your work, of your organization goals, of your organization needs, and of everything that you are doing. And thank you in the name of our students for being so proactive in this crisis. Also in our faculty, in Faculty of Law, I'm from the Faculty of Law.
We are both.
We, when the crisis started, we founded a juridical clinical, in order to help Ukrainians and NGOs that could help Ukrainians to pass this period. Of course, it's a different perception in our people's minds about Syrians, Ukrainians, Hungarians. Everybody thinks about them, judging them through some things that are, I don't like customs, like something like they have in their culture. For us, for example, for our people, Russian are not very loved in Romania, because in the public mentality, Russian did a lot of atrocities after the Second War when they came here, and being under them between the communist era, it was something that didn't help us to develop. But as you said, a humanitarian crisis is no different if they are Arabs, if they are Tamils, if they speak Tamil, or Indians, or if they are Ukrainian. So thank you again for your work here, for your mission here in these very hard times for neighbors of ours or from people who face their own wars in their countries or their own poverty in their countries, and they are seeking for asylum and for a better life and for security of their own, of their families. So if you have questions for Pablo, please raise your hands. If you have another
Views or whatever, yeah.
interest in this area, please announce us. Behind us, a QR code that will be projected. Please, if you, it's a 5 minutes questionnaire in order to see if you are interested in workshops or volunteering for UNHCR.
We don't have the easiest acronym.
Yeah, organization. So if you scan it, we'll send this questionnaire to all the students from our university, and we'll build a database. It's not your form. I changed it because I couldn't work on your form, but the results will be the same. It works?
So it will
If
be,
it doesn't work, you know.
it says, do you want to work in Coca-Cola? So I think there is a question there, or a comment.
Scan it over there. It's scan it over there. No, it can be scanned on the TV.
Sorry, sir.
So, do you think that the rise of the far-right parties in Europe can be a danger towards the efforts of the UNHCR?
Yes, absolutely. The values we stand for are radically different to the public discourse of a number of political parties on the rise in Europe. On the rise, but some of them seem to be reaching a plateau and a limit, by the way. So it's not everywhere that is equally complex. The values on which these conventions were created are a threat to some of these political actors. And I'm not only speaking about refugees, I'm speaking also on conventions like the Conventions on the Right of the Child, the Convention for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. There's a number of instruments that have been giving or acknowledging rights of a number of marginalized population and persons that need those rights particularly to be affirmed and reaffirmed, that are at odds with the political thinking of these parties. Yeah. So it's not that they are our enemies. It's the thinking that is different types of thinking. It's a different set of values in some cases, I would say. Yeah. Thanks.
After 1948, we have human charts for human
Yeah,
rights. So us, civilized nation, they start like this, us civilized nation, assume some values. But nowadays the UN faces maybe the hardest, worst.
We are not at our best
period of their existence. We talked about League of Nations. As I remember, Nicolae Titulescu, one of the greatest minds of Romanian legal area, was president 2 terms in League of Nations, the only Romanian president. But nowadays
we have a concourse, Nicolae Titulescu. I think students from Timișoara have participated brightly in the past. It's a legal contest on refugee law.
So maybe through these agencies, as you have representatives, as you have, maybe you'll strengthen the role of UN in all the countries. I hope so. That's why
thank you.
We support you, and we wish you good luck and smooth transition
to
better times.
Yeah, thank you. Am I off the hook?
Grupul mic și organizat.
You want to? Yeah.
I told them at the beginning
Yeah.
we have.
He said.
I already.
Yeah.
I'm very.
Very efficient.
Very efficient. You can volunteer for this organization. You can apply. if you want.
Maybe.
May volunteer for your organization.
Particularly after you do your undergraduate studies. We don't take students.
Grupul mic și organizat, small and organized group.
These are what I don't know how many of you have watched Game of Thrones. This seems like the wildlings. It's like noisy. Wildlings are cool, by the way. I'm not saying anything offensive. Wildlings are super cool in the world of Game of Thrones.
Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for participating to this meeting. Hoping that
I think now we
got.